All right, so we are going to begin with an overview of book two. If you notice, this is scheduled for you to be looking at on Monday or Tuesday. Um, and what I'm hoping is that you will launch into the book reading yourself and see what you can get out of it. And then next week on Monday, I'll give you a review of what I found in book two to be significant. So these are going to be some hints that I've compiled to help you read this week and things to maybe look for and chart or note or write down in your reading notes. But I kind of want you to do it on your own so I can see what you get out of it. So the first theme or thematic idea that I want you to look for is the theme of objectification. And objectification takes many forms. And so we're going to talk about what scholars and literary critics have said about this topic of objectification. And so the first thing that they came up with is this word instrumentality. And what this means is that the person is treated as a tool for the objectifier's purpose. So in other words, if you are an employee and you're working at, I don't know, whether it's a pizza shop or you're working at a grocery store or you're working as a teacher or if you're working on the family farm, whatever it might be, if you cease to become an individual with needs and rights and hopes and a life outside of that place of employment, and your employer becomes demanding or your customers become demanding to the sense that all you are to them is not a person but a means to their happiness, then they are objectifying you. It might be somebody that says, like, I don't care what you feel like right now. I don't care if you're tired. I don't care if you're sick. I don't care if you're worried, etc. Deliver this service now because I am the most important part and you are only a tool to help me get what I want. That's objectification. A second definition of objectification is the denial of autonomy. What does that mean? It means to treat a person as if they don't have any type of self-determination or self-will. Autonomy, broken down into autonomy, is that they are self-directed and self-driven. So in other words, what that means is you are not giving the person the ability to make decisions for himself or herself. Again, if we use that example of like employer-employee, ultimately the employee has the right to walk out or walk away at any point or to choose not to do something. And if they are forced, then they are being objectified and they do not have like natural human rights being granted to them. So another way to deny autonomy is if, for instance, you really want somebody to do something for you, whether it's your parents or a friend, and you pressure them and almost force them by, let's say you want your parent to do something for you. So you leverage what you have, which is your attitude or your willingness or your love or whatever that might be. Fine. If you don't do that for me, I'm not X, Y, or Z. And so you're denying their right to act as an independent being by taking away, I don't know, something to kind of force your will upon them. The third is inertness, the treatment of a person as lacking in agency and perhaps also in activity. What this means is that you take a person and you think, well, you can't do it yourself, so I'm just going to do it for you. And so you're incompetent. Let me do it. When we look at the context of this book with regard to immigrant families or with regard to women, a lot of them are objectified that you're too weak, you can't do this, or you're too poor, you can't. Let me just do that. I have to always take care of you, and then kind of resenting it. So that's objectifying them and saying that they don't have the ability to grow, that they're always fixed in this state of helplessness. Next is fungibility, the treatment of a person as interchangeable with others. So again, I'll just get rid of you. I don't like you. You are interchangeable. There's a million more like you. You mean nothing to me. And so if you treat your friends this way, fine. You won't go with me. You won't do this with me. I'm not happy with you. I'll just get a new friend. That's objectifying that person and not treating them with respect. Another is, number 5 is violability, the treatment of a person as lacking in boundary integrity. So you don't respect their boundaries. invade their personal space, their private space. You take their things from their desk without asking. You reach into their bag of food without asking. It's, in other words, I don't have boundaries with you because you are not a person worthy of being treated with boundaries. So note that. That's objectification. Number 6 is ownership. The treatment of a person is something that is owned by another, that can be bought or sold. It can be that you attempt to buy or sell their affection. This happens a lot in unhealthy relationships. And obviously, slavery, that sort of thing. 7 is denial of subjectivity. The treatment of a person as something whose experiences and feelings, if any, need not be taken into account. I don't really care how you feel about this. You aren't entitled to your feelings. If you don't like this, too bad. If you're afraid, too bad. It's very harsh and, again, is objectifying. Number 8 is reduction to body, the treatment of a person as identified with their body or body parts. That's what we tend to think of in terms of objectification, that we often hear this term that women are objectified because men, rather than looking at their eyes, rather than looking at their soul, rather than looking at who they are as a person, we're looking at their body parts and using that for our pleasure rather than the entire person. But that's only one part of this definition of objectification. Number 9 is the reduction to appearance, the treatment of a person primarily in terms of how they look or how they appear to the senses. This goes along with number 8. And number 10 is silencing, the treatment of a person as if they are silent and they lack the capacity to speak. You speak over them, you speak for them, you don't give them the dignity of space and time to formulate a thought or an opinion, and you just jump in and you just take the words right out of their mouth. So I think according to these definitions, we can all see that we objectify people a lot more than what we may have thought. But you're also going to see how the book in this chapter of the hired girls, there's certainly objectification occurring. And just here's a couple of images. So this is the objectification of body, objectification of appearance, and these are some words associated scholarship-wise with objectification is dehumanization, non-human, making something that is alive with emotions and personality, reducing it to something that is for your uses and your purposes. And this is a documentary that's all on this concept of being objectified, because we live in a commodity culture where all of these things that are created are for our purpose. We're used to using everything for our pleasure and our gain at all times, including people. So everything, including this bobby pin that I have right up here, like for my hair. Everything is for my own service and my benefit and my pleasure. Nothing is, like, this world is not used to giving in an authentic sense, but taking. And that's at the heart of objectification. The second theme you're going to see, it has to do with immigrants and women and the opportunities that they have. A couple key things within this theme is that they are at a deficit as a whole, either whether you're an immigrant or a woman. They are at a deficit of language. They are at a deficit with regard to money and skills and knowledge and cultural literacy. They don't have the advantage of those things. Secondly, they have needs that are unmet. They are hungry, they're impoverished, they lack basic human needs, they are psychologically weak because they've been taken out of a place that they associate with identity. They are powerless. They are at the mercy of the powerful and the dominant culture, or the dominant voice, or the dominant, literally physically dominant person. And then social classification is something that they have to bear the burden of. They are classified as weak. They are classified as less than. They are classified as not belonging. And then they are also hopeless and depressed. So they live within this sense of the mundane. Every single day they wake up to do the same thing because they don't have the privilege of luxury or leisure. There is usually no rest for these individuals. They live, I think it might be covered up by my video, which I can't see at the moment, but they live hand to mouth. what that means is basically survival, that every single day they live to eat, they live to survive, they live for the next meal. And that over time just wears upon the person. And then they are insecure. Insecure literally means that you are not a secure, you don't come from a place of security. They don't have security with regard to their home. They don't have security with regard to their identity, with their money, with their job, all of those things. And so I want you to trace that in this chapter, how this creates characters and individuals that, again, either take it and run with it and become stronger because of it, or it just defeats them. We're going to look at some characters. What are we going to learn about Jim in this chapter? That he is smitten with girls, he is clueless, he is weak, he is aimless, he's flighty, and he is unwise. There's not much I mean, these pictures are representations from the play. He thinks he has something, but really he has nothing. And these girls are actually a lot stronger, a lot smarter. And if you look at this, he's portrayed as sort of the child, the weak, the insecure in these images. Versus Antonia, she is driven, she's individualistic, she's headstrong, she's the master of her own fate, she's enticing, she's a leader, and she's independent. Literary features you're going to see, this is not just a story, but it's an art form. There's foreshadowing. Where do you see, oh man, something is going to happen. I don't quite know what it is, but I know something's going to happen. There's allusions well, not an allusion, but an illusion. Metaphor and simile, personification, diction, syntax, and then the tone. So I'm going to have you kind of play around with these terms and try to find instances of them in the book. So that's all sort of an overview of chapter 2. And my hope is that you will be able to identify some of these things. And when you read the notes that I have next week, or when you view the notes that I give you next week, hopefully it will be aligned and you'll see that, oh, I actually am persevering as a reader and getting some things out of this. So keep pressing on, and the next video that you'll watch has to do with the historical setting.